Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to our garden in Spokane, Washington, where the hardiness zone ranges from 5B to 6A. I am so excited today because I'm actually going to be planting some cool season crops, and those are the ones that can tolerate the cooler temperatures in early spring, and they hit the ground running way before things like tomatoes and peppers get to be planted. Now, before I proceed with that, I wanted to mention that I got a request from a follower asking if she could see how our seed starting projects indoors are coming along. So I'm going to put that at the end of this video. Don't miss it. Examples of cool season crops are arugula, beets, broccoli, cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, chard, kale, kohlrabi, leeks, lettuce, onions and shallots, pak choi, parsnips, peas, radishes, rutabagas, spinach, and turnips. I'm going to start out by planting beets and Swiss chard. And they're going under a cover, and that's because beets, spinach, and Swiss chard, which are all in the same plant family, are very susceptible to leaf miners. The adult leaf miner is a fly. It lays eggs on the leaves. The maggots hatch and tunnel through the leaves, causing a ton of damage, not to mention making the plants look pretty unappetizing. So that's why a cover is important. If you have some type of a row cover, that will save you from that type of damage. Now, beets are a root crop, and because of that, they need lots of phosphorus in order to develop those wonderful roots. And I mentioned that in my video about soil preparation. I have already added in bone meal to this part of the bed because this is where the beet seeds are going to go in rows. This side is for the Swiss chard, and that is a leafy crop. It does not require bone meal. And so I really haven't found it needs any type of soil amendment, so I'm just going to plant them in rows over here, just in the straight soil. You'll notice that the drip lines are already on this bed, even though we haven't turned on our water system yet for the season, but we're just about a week away from that. And the other thing that's really nice about having the drip lines here is that gives me a line to go by for planting the seeds. According to the packet, it says I need to plant the seeds at 1/2 inch depth. I wanted to show you what the seeds look like because they're actually clusters of seeds. But don't worry, because you don't have to separate them. You just plant each little cluster. I'll make my little planting furrow first. And I'm going to plant the seeds about 1 inch apart, knowing that I can thin the seedlings later on. And the thing with root crops is that when you thin them, you can't put the seedlings that you pulled up out of the ground into another spot in your garden because the roots will not grow normally. Now I'll fill in the little furrow. I'll plant the Swiss chard in a very similar manner, and then I'll water everything in. And last but not least, I'm going to close the cover to protect the plants. Look, I'm in a t-shirt. It has gotten very warm and very bright, so hence the sunglasses. But yeah, a t-shirt, and I've got my garden sleeves on to protect my skin, and I am much more comfortable. So in this bed, I'm going to plant peas. And if you're thinking, wait a minute, where are the rain gutters? Or if now you're confused and wondering what rain gutters have to do with peas, I need to explain very quickly. So normally what I've done for years is I plant peas in rain gutters very thickly, and when they're large enough to be transplanted into the garden, I dig 2 trenches and I slide the pea plants into each of the trenches. It's a very quick way to plant seedlings. But this year I decided to plant them a little bit more traditionally, since I know a lot of you probably don't use rain gutters, and I was ready for something different anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly soak the pea seeds just so they get nice and wet, and then I'm going to sprinkle some pea inoculant onto the seeds as I've planted them. And that's because the inoculant helps the plants fix nitrogen in their roots, and that is a very good thing. Soaking the pea seeds in some water for a few minutes will help the inoculant stick to the seeds better when they're in the trench. Pea seeds should be planted between 1 and 1.5 inches deep. Now I'm actually going to plant the seeds fairly close to each other because I've found over the years, mostly from doing the gutter peas, that they seem to grow just fine near each other. Next, I'm going to water them in, and then the last thing I'm going to do is build a little lattice framework for them to climb on as they grow using our pruned apple branches. This is the second to last bed I'm going to plant, and for this one I'm planting carrots and parsnips, and I've got all kinds of tips for you so that you're very successful at growing either or both of those crops. Since both of those crops are root crops, it's really important to add some phosphorus, usually in the form of bone meal, to the planting soil. So that's what I have already done, just in an effort to save time for you. And the handle of a hoe works great for making a little planting trench. Carrot seeds should be planted about 1/4 inch deep, and parsnip seeds can be planted 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep. This is what carrot seeds look like, and you can see they are pretty tiny. I tend to plant them rather thickly because sometimes carrot seeds aren't the greatest about germinating. And I'd rather have some plants than a bunch of empty spaces. This is what parsnip seeds look like. And there's my little friend Ned. As you can see, parsnips look quite a bit different from carrot seeds. And there are some recommendations to soak the seeds overnight before planting them so that you get a better germination rate. I've tried both regular planting, which is what I'm about to do, and soaking them, and to be honest, I haven't really noticed that much of a difference. But the thing you need to know is that parsnip seeds typically only remain viable for 1 year. So I figure if I plant them thickly and just thin them out later, it's not a problem. Once you've planted your seeds, cover them with the appropriate amount of soil based on the information on the seed packet, and then water them in really well. Now, if you've had mixed results growing carrots, I have a fantastic tip for you that really works. Once you have planted everything, firmed in the soil, and watered, you want to cover the surface of your bed with a sheet of burlap. This is pretty easy to find at craft stores. It's very inexpensive. And what happens is you put it down, and I actually pin it down with some metal pins so that it doesn't blow away. And then I water on top of it. And what happens is it keeps the soil surface from forming a crust, which can make it hard for the seeds to germinate. Because carrot seeds especially are these wimpy little things, and they need all the help they can get. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, here's how it works. Thank goodness it's not real windy. So I'm covering the surface of the bed. Oh sure, now the wind comes. And I'm going to make sure it's covering the areas that I actually put the seeds. And we have a lot of metal pins from other projects, which work great. So I'm just going to pin it down around the perimeter and make sure that it makes good contact with the soil. Okay, so now the game plan is to leave the burlap on for a week. And anytime you see that it's dried out, I would water again over the top of it because you want that soil kept nice and moist. Not super muddy, but lightly moist. Then you're going to remove it after a week, and you won't see seedlings right away, but you will in a few days, and boy, do they come up with great gusto. The next thing you need to do after that is to let the seedlings grow to about 2, maybe 3 inches tall. And you're going to space them or thin them to a 3-inch spacing. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, with root crops, you really can't transplant them elsewhere once their root hairs have been disturbed. So, unfortunately, that just goes in the compost pile. But you really want that spacing because then the roots will have plenty of room to develop. As far as the parsnips go, they're slow pokes about germinating, but they should several days after you've removed the burlap. And the parsnips really should be spaced 3 to 4 inches apart when you get to the point where you can thin them out, because those roots are really quite big in diameter, so you want to give them plenty of room to grow. This method has been working great for me for several years now. As a matter of fact, this was the same burlap I've used all those years. And this really makes the difference in getting great germination. And you want to get your plants off to a good start, right? Okay, this is the last bed that I need to plant today. I'm planting 2 root crops in it, turnips and radishes, and some leafy crops, arugula and pak choi. And what I decided to do, since I've got 2 different kinds of plant needs, is I divided the bed in half lengthwise. I'm going to put the leafy crops over here. I'll put the turnips and radishes here. And for this side of the bed, I added in some bone meal because once again, those root crops really benefit from phosphorus in the soil, and bone meal is an easy source for it. So now I'm going to make my little planting trenches for the 2 root crops. Turnips need to be planted 1/4 inch deep, while radishes need to be planted about 1/2 inch deep. Okay, so I've got the 2 root crops planted, soil firmed in. Then I'm going to plant the arugula and the pak choi. Now, first of all, because both of those are nitrogen-loving crops, I did divide up the bed and put some composted chicken manure on this side. Not a lot, because they don't need much. There's 2 other things that I wanted to mention. One is Bill has sown some pak choi seeds, and so I have some little seedlings to put in here. The other thing I wanted to mention is that all 4 of these crops are susceptible to cabbage worms and other types of cabbage family crop bug issues. Because of that, once I have completely watered everything in, I'm going to put hoops on this bed and floating row cover to keep the cabbage butterflies and other types of related insects away from these plants. It's so important that you stop and think what you're planting and if there are some potential insect problems, because if they are, and if you can group some of them together, that makes it a lot easier. So here are Bill's little seedlings, and I've found that pak choi doesn't need a massive amount of spacing. Okay, I've watered everything in. You can see that I've got some hoops on here. These are made out of very old drip tubing that we don't use anymore. And so that works quite well for a lightweight cover. This is floating row cover. It's the lightweight version of it. And I'm using it to protect those plants from pesky insects. And Murphy's Law is that the wind always comes up when you want to put it in place. See? Then I'm going to weight it down on each side. So that it doesn't come off the plants, because that would sort of defeat the purpose. And I'll put something to weigh down the sides as well. Now, as promised earlier, here is a quick peek at what we're growing indoors that we've started from seed. I've got 2 of my favorite flowers growing in here. These 2 have Verbena bonariensis vanity in them. And then these 2 are Salpiglossis or painted tongue. and those are just exquisitely beautiful. These are some very young parsley plants. There's not a whole lot going on in here, partly for a really annoying reason. But I have to explain that this one I just planted the other day. It's with some zinnia seeds, and the seeds just haven't germinated yet. All of these are planted with celery seeds, and this is the annoying thing. I planted these 2 seedling trays first with brand new seeds. They never came up, so that slowed me down while I was waiting to give them a chance to germinate. So I planted 2 more with some more brand new seeds from a different company, and they just haven't germinated yet because it hasn't been long enough. But you know, it's so frustrating when some seeds just plain aren't viable. Some of you might have seen my post the other day about how I was growing butterfly peas for the first time. It's like a sweet pea, but this is a different one that has blue flowers. Apparently you can use it for tea, you can use it for dye, so it's kind of interesting, but mainly I'm just growing them for the flowers. And what I've done in here, I planted 2 seeds per cell. You can see there's a few empty cells, and I'm okay with that because I think I ended up with a little over 30 seedlings, and that'll be great. I'll put half of them out in the front garden on the obelisk and the other half in our trellis garden. These are the broccoli seedlings. I've got Bellstar and 8 plants all together, which will be perfect. And then these are the leeks. I started them from seed quite a while ago. They're pretty slow to get started, and then they really hit the ground running once they've been transplanted. Now let's see what I'm growing in my green stalk seed starters. So I'm growing flowers in all of these seed trays, and everyone except for this one was planted on March 24th. This one was just a couple days ago, which is why you don't see any little seedlings in there. So I've got Rudbeckia Sahara, which is a beautiful flower. This is Tithonia, and it's the bright orange Mexican sunflower that I love. And you can see 5 out of 6 seeds germinated. That's plenty for me, so that's going to be okay. I also have an orange Rudbeckia that is new. And I've got 2 seed trays of Rudbeckia Sahara Sun. I think you can tell I really like Rudbeckias. So those are basically like a Gloriosa daisy, but different varieties of them. And these have all germinated quite well. But they've got a long ways to go. These are the Pandorino grape tomatoes that Bill started earlier, and the little seedlings are doing great. If you've been following me for a while, you know that Bill is crazy about growing and eating peppers of all kinds. And so here are how his seedlings are doing. He'll thin each cell to a single plant pretty soon. Well, that was a productive morning, and what a joy to get my hands in the soil again. What kinds of cool season crops are you growing? Let me know in the comments below this video. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Happy gardening!